to the bold. I decided to take an exclusive coverage of Ruto's visit. Immediately he lands in Italy and Switzerland, and to keep off the dramatic shenanigans of which plane he used and who escorted him to the airport. I found out that part. I deliberately decided to keep off from that, even though what we knew is this time round he also flew with a chartered plane, but the plane he's using is from India, not from Dubai. So he's still using planes from other countries. It's still a chartered plane anyway. And so the president attended the 50th G7 summit that was held in Italy. And from Africa here, 5 countries were invited. G7 is made up of global economies. That is Germany, London, on sidelines of Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in the UK that was in April 2018. So Kenyatta also addressed this time, and that was the 3rd time Kenyan president attended the summit, the G7 summit. So Ruto that was the 3rd time. So Ruto, this is his 4th time a Kenyan president is attending that summit. So, and I understand very well that Kenyans were waiting to see how this will be. I looked at the social media pages for the State House, and I did not see anything tangible. You know, yes, there was that speech that was the press briefing that was shared there of President Ruto's speech, but I think it was not televised even from Italy. Even though the others were televised, I just don't know where that one for the president. We've been trying to search for the speech of President Ruto in Italy, and we've tried to check around even the international media, and it is not anywhere. But I think probably I don't know what happened, but it was not televised. But we saw others, even though sharing, mingling with global leaders, President Macron, his elder brother Biden, and the Pope, the other African president. So probably we were waiting to see what the State House are going to share, but we didn't see. Now, while the president was there, he also spoke about Haiti, asking for the G7 to support the Haiti mission, which of course there are some countries that pledged support. I think that was Italy, I think that was France, President Macron, and also the president of Algeria, also supporting the Raila Odinga's AUC bid. And while that was going on, there was some protest in the streets of Italy, and these were those protests.
Trader! 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 Trader!
U.S. Prophet, William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. Prophet,
William Ruto,
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
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 Traitor. 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 Traitor.
William Ruto.
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 Traitor.
William Ruto. William Ruto.
Traitor.
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 William Ruto. U.S. puppet. William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
William Ruto.
U.S. puppet.
So that issue of Haiti is coming through, and I don't know whether it worries the president, or rather William Ruto handlers, that whenever he's on a foreign mission outside the country, any country, this Haiti issue keeps on haunting. Yes. The US trip, there was that issue of Haiti. Haiti residents in the US were protesting. Now that video I've also shown you, Haiti residents in Italy were also protesting. Remember, those are not Kenyans in Italy. There is no black person there. Those are whites. They're also complaining about it. And there's something I've always been said here. Kenya is leading mission, but there are other countries that are also donating soldiers. Benin is donating soldiers. Chad, I think, is donating soldiers. Canada was supposed to donate, they're not. Bulgaria. There are other countries. Togo. But whenever William Ruto is out of the country, he is the one that receives the condemnation. And that has made me remember this speech by Dr. McPhee, who said something about, and was really questioning why even Kenya is associating with Haiti.
You know, I was going to tell you about the history of Haiti. You know, the Americans will call it Haiti or whatever, you know, but I call it Haiti because the original inhabitants of that island, actually, Christopher Columbus landed on that island, okay, Santo Domingo is called, in the year 1492. Now, the Portuguese had not even got to Cape Town by then, you know, the Cape of Good Hope. But anyway, then what happened is it became a colony of Spain, and then the French took over the western part. And it was one of those very, very sad things, okay, because, you know, they were dealing with slaves. But now, Haiti became independent in 1804. Less than 28 years after the United States, okay, that was, you know, July the 4th, 1776. So less than 28 years afterwards, on the 1st of January 1804, Haiti became independent. But you see, it's a country, amazingly, that I used to follow very, very much because they had a dictator there. His name was Papa Doc Duvalier.
Yes.
You know him well.
Yes,
Okay.
a very violent man.
A violent man, okay, yeah, and used to kill people and so on. And
So did his son.
yeah, and his son then took over from him, and the wife of the son probably could outdo anyone in Kenyan stealing. This lady just, she stole. And the thing is, the son was a completely immature man. He used to ride these pickies around State House, at high speed, and and this was his enjoyment. But there was a coup, and now that country is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Now, in the late 1700s, it produced the major part of the coffee and the sugar that was consumed in Europe. And if you remember, we were once known as a coffee-producing country. Yeah. When you actually look at our numbers for coffee, okay, the production, well, one of the figures in the economic survey is we produced 52,000 tons in 2022, and then it went down to 49,000 tons in 2023. Another number in the economic survey is that we marketed 42,000 tons in 2022, 32,000 tons in 2023. So it's down. But we used to be, we were known as a coffee-producing country. Mm. And I then think and say, well, why are we making this relationship with Haiti? And, the original inhabitants used to call the island Haiti. Mm-hmm. That's why I call it Haiti. But, of course, the Americans will say Asia. I don't know. Maybe the Americans are just interested in trying to absolve the name of the Clinton Foundation because they had raised a lot of money for Haiti and, it didn't go to the right place. Let me just mention that because, you have to remember one of these guys who was talking on, one of these podcasts in the US, he said, look, I just want to make it clear. He was talking about Hillary Clinton, okay? He said, look, I just want to make it clear, I'm not going to commit suicide, okay? But, many Epstein committed suicide, etc. But we're getting into hot water here.
So there is a bit of it, and someone can tell us why the Haiti thing keeps on haunting us. Kenya as a country was not there in terms of, was not there for this. In fact, we are not even connected with it. And then, let's look at what he came back with, because he has left Italy. So what I'm going to share here is exclusively what the president has achieved in Italy. And I'm looking at this because it's normally taxpayers' money that is used. And when the president is out of the country, we want to believe that he's also representing the interests of the country. And that's why it's also keen. And it's our responsibility to check what the president has achieved outside the country during this mission. Kenyans.co has captured this. G7 backs Africa's bid for IMF executive seat to alleviate crippling debt. It is good that President Ruto was picked amongst African presidents to attend that summit. But this is what we are being told. This is what has achieved. And it's upon us to understand so that we see whether there is anything for us there. On Saturday, the G7 issued a communique endorsing establishment of a third chair for Sub-Saharan Africa at the IMF Executive Board slated for November. This significant step is expected to enhance the representation and voice of African nations within the IMF, providing them with greater influence in shaping policies that affect the economies. And William Ruto has been campaigning for a fair financial system in terms of these loans that can be fair for Africa, because they've been arguing that there is no way that Africa, the same loans Africa are getting from IMF are 8 times more expensive than European nations. And one of the things that they have been promised is that there will be a third chair of IMF coming from the sub-Saharan Africa. And the G7 who are in support of this are saying that that will help to advance that pro-African policies, or rather would help in shaping policy there. If they have 3 chairs and one represents Africa, the other represents other regions, then how is it a guarantee that Africa having an executive seat there is going to influence policy, even though you can also not rub it forward? He's saying, we endorse African countries' call for greater voice in international bodies and welcome AU's participation in G20 as a permanent member and the creation of third chair for sub-Saharan Africa at the IMF Executive Board in November. And they're saying countries like Kenya have received billions in financial support from the IMF. And this financial support is often accompanied by stringent economic and fiscal reform conditions. And so the new chair at the IMF will alleviate some of these burdens. If they will be able to get it, then it will be to their benefit. But there is something with the G7. There is something that was advised that mostly discussed here. This is what they're saying. During the G7 summit, Italy President Ruto urged the G7 to champion for reforms of multinational financial systems. But they are also asking or laying out strategy to counter the China influence in the continent. I don't know whether the stake is about the China presence or they're coming just with their solutions, because what Africa has been vouching for is let them be allowed to choose who they want to interact with. So that if there is something good from China, let's get it from China. If there is something good from the West, let's get it from the West. But the West is asking, one of the conditions on the table is you must choose between China and Kenya. And I think President of the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, outlined the agenda saying they will tackle a wide range of issues, including the solid and controllable supply chains in the continent. Now, one of the things on African issues, Italy will seek to promote and reinforce long-standing concerns and uncontrolled migration from continent to Europe, and perennial issues such as climate change, as well as China's growing influence on the continent. So the reason why Africa's stake in the G20 is growing is because of China influence. So you can answer me there. What is from what you've just heard, what is it for us in that G20 meeting? Ramaphosa did not attend because he was giving his first address in Parliament, having entered into a deal with the Democratic Alliance, an alliance of a coalition of a very unique coalition of opposition closing ranks with the ruling party, the 30-year-old ruling party, and it's a development that I think is borrowed from Kenya. Uhuru Kenyatta I think Uhuru Kenyatta really brokered that deal. I will look at it. Haiti mission will hurt Kenya diplomatic stand. Because it cannot be that whenever President Ruto is away, this Haiti mission thing keep on reoccurring. It's really hurting our standing as a country. Now, the fair funding model, I think, yes, us getting a chair, Sub-Saharan Africa getting a chair, board chair at the IMF, is more touted as a strategy, or rather takeaway that will help influence the policy. But I don't still understand. There is some contradiction. Why is Kenya pushing for this? While when we are talking to the sovereign, when we are talking to the population here, we are saying we want to collect more taxes so that we avoid loans. So what is our interest with Africa getting cheap loans if as a country, locally, we are promoting taxation so that we can reduce debts? as William Ruto speaks within the country here, he projects an image of someone who is not interested in these loans. But whenever he's out of the country, the discussion is about how Africa needs very cheap loans. So that contradiction is those are very contradiction. It's a very contradicting ideology that experts can look into. The other thing is the G7 counter-checking the China-Russia wave in the continent is going to put the continent in crossroads. I've listened to William Ruto when he's being asked of whether he supports Israel or whether he supports Israel or Palestine. It has been playing, sitting in the fence, that on two-state thing, standing by both. And whenever president is even confronted by the question of whether east or west, he keeps on saying, we go both. But I think someone is saying, in the look of things, we cannot go both. We'll have to choose one. Because, and that will be very disruptive. The more Africa will try to, the more it will take that position of, I have to worship the West and chase China, it will be very disruptive. Remember, even us as a country, we have some big facilities from China. The expressway, we are still paying. The railway line, we are still paying. The other day, they were supposed to build for us some foreign affairs office. So there is a lot in it. And I think as a country, we will have to tread very careful on how we navigate that space. Thank you.